Welcome to the DesignRush podcast. I'm your host, Bianca Mayer. Today we're talking to Goldie Chan, founder and CEO of Warm Robots, a leading social media strategy agency that has partnered with major brands like Lego, Adobe, Pinterest, and LinkedIn. We'll discuss how LinkedIn is the top platform for connecting with decision makers. In 2024, 80% of B2B leads come from LinkedIn, where 65 million users are business decision makers. It's the best place to connect with people who hold the budgets.
I can't say enough for LinkedIn being the place that has the decision makers. It's where the people with the budgets are. And I think that's so powerful because you may be able to get a lot of attention on a platform like Instagram or TikTok, but LinkedIn is quite literally where the decision makers and the budget holders, deciders are and are looking for new people.
We'll also explore how creating unique client experiences, like secret dinners, is a smart way to generate leads. These events can boost clients' engagement by 33%, showing that face-to-face interactions still matter.
Going to conferences and physically meeting people and talking about what you do face-to-face has been always such an effective way for me to get clients for my agency, because you have that, once again, that human connection. You're connecting face-to-face, and it's very, very effective. And it gets you out there, and it gets you meeting clients that you wouldn't have met before from behind the screen.
Additionally, we'll cover how specializing in one area and partnering with other agencies is a growing trend. In 2024, agencies that focus on a niche will see 45% higher close rates. Partnering with others to fill in gaps is a great way to grow.
If other agencies out there are offering 20 million things, being the agency that goes to other agencies and says, hey, I'll handle all of your SEO, right? And that's specifically what I'll do is I will handle all of your SEO. And if I get clients that want copywriting, I'll hand all of that to you. But all of the SEO is what I want for my agency. So especially if you're thinking about growth, one great way is to partner with other agencies and to take that section of their work that maybe they aren't addressing and offer a helpful crutch for them to lean on.
Join us as we delve into all this and more. And remember to hit that like and subscribe button to keep up with all of our future conversations with industry leaders. Let's get started. Goldie, a very warm welcome to the DesignRush podcast again. It is so amazing having you here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Okay, so Goldie, I really want to talk to you about your baby, which is Warm Robots. So
Yes.
First of all, can you just share how you started Warm Robots and what really inspired you to create a social media strategy agency?
Yes, so I think I did this a little bit backwards than most people. So I had a career 9 to 5 for over a decade where I was doing branding, marketing, really on the client side of things in-house. And around 2017, 2018, I started creating videos on LinkedIn. I was in what I like to call sabbatical, but that's really the fancy word for saying time off, right? Between roles. So I just left a head of marketing role at a startup actually based out of New York. And I was just thinking, okay, well, I don't want too much of a gap in my resume. I'm sure we've all been there before. So let me just do some content. So I started making videos on LinkedIn in their video beta very early on, and I suddenly became the number one video creator, number one content creator on LinkedIn in 2 years. So in 2 years, I made over 800 videos and was consulting and traveling all over the world. And what's funny is I was consulting, but I didn't necessarily have a vehicle for it. So I also was just like, great, I'm just going to say I have this consulting agency. It's called Warm Robots, and I'm going to do my consulting through Warm Robots. Now, Warm Robots wasn't real. And what's so funny is Warm Robots, my agency, got clients before it was even real because I was getting clients. And so it, of course, now is a real company that filters the clients, and it gives a different set of clients than the clients that I get personally doing consulting as well. So it was a very interesting journey of almost Pinocchio with the real boy. I had the idea of the agency, and then the agency became very real because people were messaging me from Warm Robots and asking to work with the agency, and that was pretty magical.
That is incredible. I haven't really heard a story like that yet before. That's
Yeah.
amazing, actually. So, okay, after you had started it and it was basically not really real, as you say, at
Yeah.
what point did it become really real? Like, did you register the business and stuff like that?
So I think to me, the point at which it got really real was yes, the scrambling to register the LLC
Yeah.
and making sure that paperwork was filed for that, and making sure it had a website and had an official presence and all of those amazing things. Building and it's funny to say this, right? But the cobbler has no shoes. So building the branding assets for my branding and social strategy agency, doing the social media pieces for my own social media strategy agency was a little bit of when it became very real. And it was once again one of those things where it was getting paying clients before it actually had all those pieces in place. So I was playing a little bit of catch up in the first few months.
Jeez, I can imagine. That sounds like it must have. But I mean, there must be such a huge sense of accomplishments with something that you did while you were in between stuff and you kind of tried to, not have a gap in your resume. You were trying to fill stuff up and you actually started an incredibly successful agency out of that. I mean, it's not a lot of people that were able to do that. I want to ask, like, what was the one thing that really surprised you the most out of that process?
I think what was very surprising about running my own agency and was something that I need to learn is I had always been in-house. I had always either run internal teams or been part of a team being run, which is a very different thing than being an agency owner, or being a leader on the team where you're not reporting to someone else. It's just such a different dynamic. And I think what really surprised me is learning how to take those reins and really making the decisions, because other people weren't going to make those decisions for me. So that includes what kind of contractors do you initially hire, right? What kind of resources do you need for the business? What kind of partners do you want to partner with? All of those decisions as an agency owner or agency founder, especially in that first year or two, those all rest with you.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's actually what most of our conversation is going to go about today as well, is like all the trials and tribulations basically that an agency owner that has to go through. And I think if you look at most agencies, there's always hurdles that you have to come over and get past. And even as an agency, you also need to outsource sometimes, especially when you're first getting started. Sometimes you don't start with an in-house team. So it's very interesting, those dynamics. But before we moved on to that, I just want to ask you, what at this point would you say makes Warm Robots super unique in the social strategy and branding space?
Absolutely. So I think one of our unique selling points is that we have worked with these major Fortune 500 brands on social side, on community building side, on the storytelling side. So how are you telling really beautiful stories with your community on social media, right? All those, I went backwards, all those pieces together, put together. And how do you do that through, say, ambassador programs? How do you do that through your own internal community that you already have, or even employees? How do you activate your employees in an intelligent way? How do you then think about what are they posting on social media? How can you give them helpful guidelines? All of those pieces, and this is just a fraction of those pieces and those questions and those thoughts that we go through with brands. But I think it's really helpful with the agency that I run to think about the stories that they're telling. And a lot of them are beautiful customer stories, employee stories. They're very human stories. And one of the keynotes that I've been doing this year is humanizing your brand in the age of AI. I just gave this talk at VidCon And I might give this talk next year at South by Southwest. So we'll see about that.
So Goldie, just circling a little bit back again now. You were talking earlier about, getting leads, working with really big clients like,
Yes.
Pinterest, Adobe, Lego, all of these really
Right.
incredible, huge brands. So I wonder, when you first started Warm Robots, and obviously you went through that period, you were rushing to get the LLC done and actually establish Warm Robots as a proper company.
Right.
I wonder, how did you get leads, like these huge
Mhm.
leads? What were the initial steps that you really took to secure these types of partnerships?
Yeah, so for me, it was easy because I had such a booming presence on LinkedIn. And I can't say enough for LinkedIn being the place that has the decision makers. I was just having a conversation with somebody about this. I was just doing a live stream at Adobe. So glad we mentioned Adobe. And I was speaking with someone else there, and they were saying that they have just discovered LinkedIn. They've been being more active on LinkedIn because it's where the decision makers are. And I wanted to add on to that, what that person said. And I said, it's where the decision makers are. It's where the people with the budgets are. And I think that's so powerful because you may be able to get a lot of attention on a platform like Instagram or TikTok, or I could name a billion other platforms, right? I think that there are so many wonderful platforms out there, but LinkedIn is quite literally where the decision makers and the budget holders, deciders are, and are looking for new people. And because it's still, when I started creating content on there in 2017, 2018, I said it was the Wild Wild West. Now
Yeah.
we are, whatever the next evolution of Wild Wild West is. Maybe there's some saloons. I don't know. Maybe there's some horses, I think, around.
No more tumbleweeds.
Some saloons. Yeah, there's running water.
Yeah.
there's some city infrastructure now from 2017 to now. And I think it's really exciting. So I think that there's still so much more opportunity, though, to be seen and to grow your agency on the platform. And I always am such a fan of unique and original creatives. And I think that you can apply that to how you attract attention for your agency. And I think the question that you asked me at the very beginning is, how is your agency special or different? I think a lot of agency owners don't start with that question. And I think that's where a lot of agency owners end up doing 20 million things with their agency. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But it's so helpful if your audience knows to reach out to you because you, for example, do SEO for social platforms. If they know that, and that's the starting point, and you also do a lot of other things. You do copywriting, you do you do videos, etc. It's helpful to know that nugget, that center of where you start, and have that be the essence of your brand, and also have that be the nexus point that your clients start at.
Amazing. So, can I ask you, if you had to sum up your little nugget for Warm Robots, what would it be?
It would be it would be a social media storytelling and branding agency. Done.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so from your experience then, I know that you're saying, with LinkedIn, there's a lot of opportunity to grab clients there and decision makers and obviously people with the big budgets and all of that. But I do wonder, from your experience again, what would you say, apart from utilizing social media platforms, are 3 really cost-effective ways to generate leads for your agency in today's world?
I love this question. So I'm not an ads. I will start here. I am not an ads person. And so even my agency partners with other agencies that do ads well, because I know the limitations of our agency and I don't want to dive in there. So that being said, there are many other ways you can use ads to do this, and I don't. I do all organic. So the way that I gather leads for my agencies, I would just tell you directly the ways I do it. So I already said LinkedIn, so we'll exclude LinkedIn. It can't be one of my 3. So another one is actively going to conferences. This is just basic 101. The conferences have existed since the dinosaur age, I'm sure. But going to conferences and physically meeting people and talking about what you do face to face has been always such an effective way for me to get clients for my agency, because you have that, once again, that human connection. You're connecting face to face, and it's very, very effective. And it gets you out there, and it gets you meeting clients that you wouldn't have met before from behind the screen. So that's one. Two is, sometimes what I do is when I travel to other cities, I host these underground secret dinners, which I guess are not secret anymore because I said this on this podcast, but I sometimes host these secret dinners where I bring together actually other women founders, other women entrepreneurs, other women who are just doing interesting things. They don't need to be in business, but they are just a woman doing something interesting, right? Or I do these cool dinners. I call them creatives of color brunches. And so it's just really artistic people who are folks of color. And we all get together and we all share what we are working on and what we are creating. And all of these things that I host are also helpful ways that, if very subtly, it also brings in people in the door, because they're like, oh, actually, we need help with our social media strategy. Can you jump in and do a retainer for us for a couple of months? I can say, oh, absolutely. But it's a very soft sell. I know people who host these dinners and it's a very hard sell. In fact, I've been invited to those dinners, and a lot of times I turn them down because I know it's just going to be a sales dinner. And I think in the old days, this is how they sold timeshares, if I'm not correct.
Oh my goodness,
Incorrect.
you're right. There
Right?
was
And
a
I've never,
time. Yes.
I never sat in on one of those meetings, but I think that's what that used to be. So that's two. So conferences. Two, host your own micro dinners. And then three, I love a good meetup. I love a good local meetup. So whatever you are personally into or you are interested in can always be a venue to potentially get new clients in the door, right? So that means joining a hiking club, cooking club, any of those very hyper local activities can be a good way to get new clients in the door. And as a bonus, I'm going to give you number 4, because I believe in local education. And I always tell people this is, if you want to be known for something, teach it, be a thought leader in it. And the best way to do that is to quite literally teach it. So is there a community college that you could teach courses at? Is there a local place that you could teach a course? And then not only are you helping people in your community with your area of expertise as an agency owner, if they don't really want to do that, or they want to learn more from you, they can then hire you. So it is an automatic way to also get an influx of new customers that does good. I'm such a fan of things that do good in your local community, and I feel like that's one of them.
100%. I have to say, I mean, it kind of reminds me, I was volunteering at a animal shelter here in Portugal as well. And I have to say, when I was starting out, when I started, that's actually how I got into content writing and where it brought me to where I am now. It's insane. There was someone that needed content written, and I was like, I'm pretty good at writing. I can write, you know?
See, and I will say that
kind of spiraled.
It spiraled. And I will say probably what happened, you know, I'm just going to make a wild guess, is that you had a good personality. You're very personable. You were probably very easy to talk to. And if you are somebody that other people get along with, if you just put yourself out there more, people will hire you. People will hire you even if you don't have that exact skill set, because you are a likable person.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more, Goldie, honestly. And that's something that I even have said to people constantly. Like, you have to not only be a yes person, but you have to be pleasant to be around, you know? Like, I'm not saying say yes to every single thing that you, even if you don't want to do it, but if opportunities present themselves, just say yes, because you don't know where that's going to take you. And to get those opportunities and have them offered to you, you have to be pleasant to be around. I think that, yes, of course, you need to have people skills 100% if you're going to try and, you know, get more clients or whatever, because at the core of it, in my opinion, It's human to human at the end of the day.
It is absolutely human to human. And I'm actually writing
Yeah.
a little bit about this. So I'm working on my first book, Personal Branding for Introverts. And part of that is also just getting out there as an introvert, and putting yourself out there in a way that's not disingenuous to being an introvert. And I think the same thing is true of agency owners. Is you It's so hard because you're probably in the weeds managing everything, keeping your agency running, getting a million emails about your current projects, that you don't even have time to think about future projects. I've literally started doing the thing where I'm taking calls. I'm taking these warm lead calls at the airport when I'm waiting for the plane, because I need to take those warm lead calls when I can fit them in. Because if you don't keep that influx of warm and cold leads and you keep them going, uh, once you're done with your current projects, then you're not in such a great place. So I'm always a big fan too of turning on the faucet, seeing what comes out. Yeah,
Absolutely. It's relationship building at the end of the day as well. And people will always remember you, as long as you keep that sort of spark there, right?
yeah.
Okay, so moving on to the next topic. What 5 techniques, Goldie, would you say, or do you use when pitching warm robots to larger brands, or have you used to pitch warm robots to larger brands? I mean, can you share an example of a specific pitch that went really well?
Yeah, so I think there's a few different pitches that I've done that have been quite successful. So one of the first times I worked with Adobe, and this surprises a lot of people. So I'm an Adobe ambassador and very visibly on the creative side of things, because I'm a creative as well. But what most people don't know is I started, and my agency started, with helping Adobe on the B2B marketing side, which also a lot of people don't know that Adobe has quite a strong enterprise side to it, with quite a few amazing enterprise level tools. And when I was initially talking to Adobe on the enterprise side and I was pitching them a few ideas, I think what was really successful is, and I'm just going to come back to this, is going to come back to network. It is who I know in my network and who I'm able to speak to also in my network. So based off the fact that my LinkedIn had, say, a lot of C-level executives, had a lot of director level and above decision makers who follow me, I see a lot of what they talk about. And so I was able to pull some of those themes for the first project that I pitched to Adobe, on the B2B side, because I knew what those conversations were in real time. So I was able to give them an idea that was very topical, that was very helpful. And that's what I pitched, was something based off my direct experience. So that's tip number 1, which is, where are you having your conversations and how can you apply those conversations to your clients? Let's go into second tip then. So as I'm thinking through a couple of the other brands that I worked with, I think pitching is so interesting, as you know. So whenever you're a client pitching, and let's say whenever your agency pitching a client, for the most part, I've been lucky enough to pitch very warm leads, or at least lukewarm leads, leads that have come in and they maybe know a thing or two about the agency and want to work with them. So there was a client that we worked with before that was very interestingly in the funeral death industry, an industry I have not worked in before, and is not necessarily in my direct circle of expertise. And so when we were pitching them to work with them, one of the things that we did was, and this is tip number 2, if you don't know, find out. So we did so much research. We did so much research within the team, within the SEO side of the team, within the other parts of the team. We did so much research to be able to deliver them the kind of storytelling and branding proposal that they wanted that would resonate with their customers, that was going to achieve the goal that they had mentioned to us in the initial planning call of what they wanted. And so that's something that I always think about, is definitely, if you don't know, to really do the research and find out. I remember I was speaking to this young woman earlier this week, and she was saying that she's just on YouTube all the time, watching YouTube videos because she's trying to learn. And I love this for her. I love that she's trying to learn. I'm a LinkedIn Learning instructor, and there are so many good courses on LinkedIn Learning to learn about a lot of the subjects that agency owners are curious about. And I'm not sure if I'm even supposed to say this, but I'm a big fan of local libraries. And a lot of local libraries, right? A lot of local libraries have benefits to them beyond just being able to borrow books. And some of them offer benefits like, I live in Los Angeles, LA offers the benefit of being able to take LinkedIn Learning courses for free. So you can take these advanced courses for free and learn communication with leaders, right, is probably a subject of a course that exists on LinkedIn Learning. So there's so many courses and resources that you can dig into that are available if you just do a little bit of digging. And of course, wherever you are in the universe, get a local library card, check out what your local library offers, because so many of them offer digital resources now that are additional learning and also higher education things that I think didn't exist years ago, but now do. So take advantage of those free resources to level up you and your agency.
So the next thing then, Goldie, that I want to speak to you, I know obviously as a founder and CEO of a very successful social media strategy and branding agency, what advice do you have for businesses looking to find the right agency to partner with? So what I mean by that is, what do they really need to keep in mind when they're trying to find an agency? You know, let's say it's a business or a brand. What do they need to pay attention to? Do you have, say, 3 things that they need to really keep in mind when they're agency hunting, if I can put it that way?
Absolutely. So I would say the 3 things are timing, 1, expertise, 2, and 3, likability. I know. Then 3, maybe we could swap that out with something else, but we'll start with likability for now. So number 1, expertise, pretty obvious. It's a lot easier to work with brands or work with agencies that have already done the work that you want to do. I think a lot about one of my friends who runs a very successful boutique Facebook ads agency. They just specialize in, I think they also do Snapchat ads, but they essentially do social media ads, and they focus hyper narrowly on that area of expertise. And they have years and years and years of case studies in this area. And I think that's what also makes them very successful, because whenever new clients come to them, they can point to any number of legitimate and reasonable case studies. And I think case studies is definitely part of expertise. Is, can they point to real numbers? Can they point to real examples of work that they've done before? And then that brings me to, so I said number 1 was expertise. And then number 2, I absolutely forgot what I said for number 2. So I'm going to skip right to number 3, likability. So number 3, I definitely said likability. And I think it's important that you also, and likability can mean a lot of things. And I'm going to subheader under likability, communication. So being able to effectively communicate with an agency as a client is very helpful. Are you a client that needs constant communication with your agency, and is the agency unwilling or unable to do so? Then that's unfortunately not an agency that you will get along with, and you shouldn't work with them. So I think that it's helpful to know how you communicate, and it's helpful to know how the agency communicates. And you can get a little bit of that during the pitch phase. I think that you can get a sense of that if they're already being a little, say, not responsive in the way that you want during the pitch phase, or if they are using language that is maybe a little bit jarring or something that you don't know that you want to be messaged. And also in the pitch documents themselves, what language, what kind of communication are they using in there? What kind of wording are they using in there to express your brand? I think that's all helpful to see if they would be a good fit with you as your agency for whatever particular thing you're looking for.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think especially with the messaging that agencies are using, I think looking at how they express themselves, how they explain the services that they offer, their pricing structure, things like that really, I think, give you a very keen insight into what it is that they're about and whether you would like to work with them or not, right? Um, so, Goldie, just moving on a little bit as well, what top three things do you think agencies or businesses should focus on to build a really long-standing relationship with clients? I mean, are there any key things that they could focus on to really keep the relationship happy, and stuff like that? Like, what three things do you personally do with Warm Robots,
I'm going to
actually?
try to remember these three things as I say them out loud. So, one would be transparency, two would be
Okay.
competency, uh, and three would be growth, mutual growth. So, on the subject of transparency, so say you already have a client, say you are already working with that client. On the agency side of things, it's so helpful to be very transparent, and I mean this in good times and in bad. So, like a marriage, it's helpful if you share with your clients, if very transparently, if you are having troubles that month to move through a certain workload, or if a big event is coming up and you will not be able to execute in the way that you normally would be able to. I think being transparent and upfront is always good. And I think that this also applies to if you're working with a long-term client and you need to raise your prices, right? Something that we don't like to talk about, but absolutely happens, and absolutely happens for agencies that are growth focused, and you should raise your prices over time. So I think having transparency between yourself and your clients is so crucial, and being able to communicate, the thing that we talked about before, having good communication also with your clients and being able to say that to them directly is helpful. To me, some of this is also just being an adult, being the adult in the room, which I know is not a popular thing to say, but it's helpful if you are the agency liaison or the agency leader, or whatever role you serve in the agency, that you are the adult in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That, I think, is a lot easier said than done for a lot of people, especially when it
Yeah.
comes to talking about money, right? And it's
Yes.
for a lot of people are so uncomfortable talking about that. And I actually, it's given me a follow-up question.
Yes.
How do you go about discussing price raises for your services, actually, with clients to sort of ensure that everybody's on an even keel?
Yeah, well, price raises are the one of the most touchy subjects, right?
Yeah.
It's like asking somebody their age. You just
Yeah.
don't, just probably don't do it. Um,
Yeah.
when you're thinking about raises, I think it's helpful to also unilaterally do it across a set of clients, right? I think it's helpful to say, in 2025, I'm raising all of my prices 10%
Hmm.
across the board. However, I'm giving legacy clients a grace period of 3 to 6 months, right? And so that's how I like to message my price increases is I always favor my legacy clients. And by legacy, if I've been working with them for 3 to 5 years or more, um, then I give them special pricing, but they also still get at least the world's tiniest increase. And they will eventually be brought up to speed, even if it's not at, say, the same prices as everyone else who joins new, they're going to get an incremental increase. And I think that
Mm,
that's important for your business to at least do incremental increases over time to, of course,
exactly.
account for inflation, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. I mean, I think that kind of goes hand in hand again with having long-standing relationships is sort of like making your long-standing clients special in a way because they are, right? So I think something like that, considering them in that kind of situation is probably the best way to go. Okay, so Goldie, I just have one more question for you,
Yes.
actually, because I know we're coming up on an hour soon. So the last thing that I'd like to ask you, Goldie, is what three massive opportunities are you seeing for agencies, to grow revenue this year and going into next year?
3 major opportunities. I'm going to start with one that I think is going to surprise some people, because I know what everyone wants me to say, and I'm not going to say that one. So
Okay.
I think I will start with being a helper agency to other agencies. So what do I mean by that? I mean, if other agencies out there are offering 20 million things, being the agency that goes to other agencies and says, hey, I'll handle all of your SEO, right? And that's specifically what I'll do is I will handle all of your SEO. And if I get clients that want copywriting, I'll hand all of that to you. But all of the SEO is what I want for my agency. So especially if you're thinking about growth, one great way is to partner with other agencies and to take that section of their work that maybe they aren't addressing and offer a helpful crutch for them, a helpful column for them to lean on.
I love that. I actually feel like that's kind of that's more of a unified network of agencies as opposed to like basically everybody putting against each other, right? I would like that. That would be beautiful.
I mean, definitely one of my favorite quotes is a rising tide raises all ships.
Exactly.
And yes, and I think that that's true in the agency world. I think if you are always thinking, how can I outcompete every single person? I never want to give somebody else business. You are fighting a losing battle by doing that. And I think the other area that opportunity exists, just because now we are in the age of the influencer, and I know the I word is sometimes looked extremely down upon, but I think it's a very valid term. And I think that when agency owners are themselves thought leaders and have influence, I think it is easier to drive traffic and drive interest and drive business to their agency. So that's definitely something else to think about, which is there someone on the agency team that would be a great spokesperson for the agency itself and be a competent person to stand in that place? And it doesn't always have to be even the agency owner. It can even be somebody who's brought on specifically for that role. But I think it's a good idea to have someone that serves as almost that public facing liaison, that thought leader in between. So I think that's definitely something that really takes into consideration the fact that we are going to just become more and more involved in this influencer age.
100%. I think it's a bit more digestible in that sense. I think, taking sort of that influencer thing when it's actually something to be really passionate about. But that's my opinion, to be honest.
If the word influencer is unpleasant to people, because I know it is, I'll replace that with thought leader. I'll replace that with expert. I'll replace that with a lot of different words. But I think the original essence of influencer is the most important part is, do you have influence over your targeted audience, your very specific audience that you want to reach? And I don't mean you have influence over 1 million people who will never work with your agency and have no interest in it, because that's not helpful, right? So I think it's helpful to be an expert in an area where you have the right kind of influence.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the key thing. Goldie, that's it for today. Honestly, thank you so much for making the time in between, like traveling and everything and all your meetings that you've had. I cannot tell you how thankful I am and how wonderful it has been to speak to you today, really.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that's a wrap on our conversation with Goldie Chan. Whether you're looking to grow your agency or understand how brands make their choices, the DesignRush podcast has you covered. Subscribe now for exclusive tips, expert interviews, and actionable insights that will take your agency to the next level.